Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. My show is about celebrating artists from all walks of life and their body of worth. And I am very excited about today's show. When I think of Frank Ferrante, I think of a quote that Carol Channing gave to me years ago. She said, "There are entertainers and there are performers. A seal is a performer. A seal is only interested in one thing, getting a fish. It will flap its wings. It will roll a ball on its nose. It will do whatever it can because he knows he's going to get that fish at the end." And then there are entertainers, those great artists that come along in our life who are all about the audience and giving and giving and giving. Once again, that's Frank Ferrante. I first saw him in 1986 at the Lucille Lortel Theater. I went on a Sunday night to see Groucho, A Life in Revue, with him and the incredible Faith Prince. And just a couple of months ago, I was chatting with our dear mutual friend, Shelley Goldstein, and she said, "You should have Frank on the show." And I said, "Oh my God, do you think he will do it?" She said, "I'll ask him." She did. He said yes, and he's here today. But before I bring him on, I'd like to give you just a glimpse of what makes him so brilliant. Remember, he's an entertainer, not a seal.
The one, the only, Groucho! Captain Spaulding, the African explorer. Did someone call me Schnorrer? Hooray, hooray, hooray. One morning I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How we got in my pajamas, I don't know. Have you played that one? My mother was a stage mother. Her brother was Al Sheen of Gallagher and Sheen. Oh, Mr. Gallagher, what's on your mind this morning, Mr. Sheen? Absolutely, Mr. Gallagher, positively, Mr. Sheen. And my mother figured that if a schnook like her brother could make it in show business, so could his son. What's your name, sir? Maybe I can help you out. Is Ron. Right, is Ron. Ron, would you give, he's all by himself, would you mind giving Ron a little hug? Stand up and there you go. Hey, would you mind giving Ron a little hug? He's all by himself. A doctor's a man's best friend, whoa, oh. A doctor's a man's best friend. A doctor is a man's best friend. Giving Ron a little hug. Everybody give Ron a little hug over here. There's a lonely man in the second row with a cheap beer. Get over here, Ron. Get right over here. Oh, Lydia, say, have you met Lydia? Lydia, the tattooed lady. She has eyes that folks adore so, and a torso even more so. Groucho Marx meets Karl Marx, ladies and gentlemen. Who is this gentleman here?
This is Matt.
Matt, welcome, Matt. Matt, how old are you, young man? 16 years old. Are you a Groucho Marx fan? Marx Brothers fan?
I am.
And who's your favorite Marx brother?
Zeppo.
Zeppo. Harpo is what you see on the stage and the screen. He's a very lovable man. Harpo adopted enough children so that there'd be one in every window when he came home from work. Everything that ever grew, the goose and the gander and the gosling too, the duck upon the water when he feels that way too says, now there's a voice quack. I got it. What do you do for a living, Greg? Nothing, no. You're in show business too, eh? What's your father, Marty, do?
He's a freelance writer.
How long's he been out of work? And what's your mom do for a living?
A lawyer.
A lawyer. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. And what's your father do for a living?
He's a rougher.
A roofer?
Yeah.
Has your father ever had shingles? Can you show me a couple of fencing moves? Hold on a second. Here. Yeah, go ahead. You take this. Go ahead. Are you ready? Don't hurt me, okay? Am I doing the right thing here? I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Go ahead. Take a swipe at me. See if I can. Ow! What do you think I'm doing? Folks, I can't do this show forever. I think I found my replacement right here in Seattle. Ladies and gentlemen, Simon! Come in.
Oh, willow, tit willow, tit willow.
I've been saying about is the future of this place. We're gonna speed things up. If a guest orders a 3-minute egg, give it to him in 2 minutes. If he orders a 2-minute egg, give it to him in 1 minute. If he orders a 1-minute egg, give him a chicken, let him work it out for himself. I love you very much. So be a real life Pagliacci and laugh, clown, laugh.
Frank, Carol was right. You are wonderful. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I want to put things in perspective with where we are right now, unfortunately. And I've got a grim milestone to give to everyone today. This will really give you a jolt. Today marks 400 days since our theaters shut down, which means venues all across the country, we see that they're slowly coming back. But I want to ask you, Frank, how are you doing really in the midst of all this?
Oh, it's Richard. First of all, thank you for showing that, because it made me smile, and it also exhausted me to watch it. But I haven't done that in a long time. And to answer your question, it's been ups and downs. You know, it's been you know, as you said before, and I've been watching your celebrations since I've been booked.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And it's been a joy.
Thank you.
I won't look as good as George Chakiris does when I'm his age 39. But you know, it started off okay, and then, you know, we're going to open up in 3 months, then 6 months, then 9 months, then so every time it would shift, it was like a punch in the gut. And it was, you know, I'm trying to, for someone who performs all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate for 35 years to do that. It's been a real challenge. The good parts have been time with loved ones. Of course, I've got 2 teenagers, so I get to spend time with them, and that's a blessing. Mm-hmm. My mom, who had an accident a year ago, who's fine now. I was able to be there for her. So that on that level,
Teresa.
Yes, You know, good for
I've done
you.
my research.
Wow, that's amazing.
Be careful with what may come up today.
Oh my gosh. Well, but it's been what I've done. Listen, I haven't made any money like so many of my colleagues, and I've done projects though. It was fun to see the clip, the kind of the highlight reel you showed, Richard, because just this year during the pandemic, I was able to, with the director Drea Weber, edit this one-man show that I've been doing since college years. I was discovered by Arthur Marx when I was at USC performing this one-man show as a student project. So that show has been tooling around even before Groucho, Life in Review, which you referenced earlier. So that was put together, and I can give you some breaking news. A week ago, public television has opted to put it on, to air it. So it'll happen a year from now, but it's a major deal for me because that show has never been preserved. And that show really is just been the evolution of these 35 years of thousands of performances. So that was great news. And I haven't shared it even on my own pages because, it's in the nascent stages. But to get to your question, I've struggled. There are moments where I felt despondent. There's moments I felt hopeful. And now I feel hopeful because there's something on the horizon. I have some potential for work starting in late June with this other character I do in the cirque world, in the circus world that I've been doing for 20 years. I opened a venue in Chicago a year and a half ago in the theater district with this character. So that's hopeful. One-nighters, I'm getting offers for one-nighters. But if that was not happening, I think I'd be going through a particularly difficult time. I hadn't worked for it's been almost a year and a half for me. Mm-hmm. It was a slow year anyway. So what do you do? It's, we're freelancers. My friends are freelancers. And we watch most of us are watching our assets diminish and try to figure it out. And we're on unemployment. We're losing. I know I lost my health insurance. The Actors Fund has been a help to so many of us over the years. And I will mention this, that you are doing a fundraiser on Facebook for the Actors Fund. Happy early birthday, by the way. Thank you. Cheers.
Yes, thank you. Your birthday is coming up. So anyone, if you're enjoying today's show, make a contribution to the Actors Fund in celebration of Frank Ferrante.
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Yeah. I'll drink to that as well.
What's in there?
Coffee. But I want to ask you, is this the longest period that you've been without work since you started doing this? What is that doing to you psychologically? I mean, obviously, when I first started doing these interviews, one of my first interviews was with Donna McKechnie, and she said that she thinks that those of us who are in the business have a better grasp on things. We don't live in a 9-to-5 world. We live from gig to gig to gig. So perhaps those of us who are in this business, and this is a blanket statement, of course, are dealing with this a little bit better than those who do have a 9-to-5 job. But for someone like yourself, who is working nonstop, it seems like, and it's hard for me to believe that it was 35 years ago that I saw you at the Lucille Hotel Theater.
I know, it's insane. It's a mixed bag, Richard. There are times I'm kind of, to be honest with you, I'm partly thrilled not to be working because I was working at so much, as you said, at a pretty high level, and it's a lot of interactive humor I do, whether it's Groucho or the cirque shows or directing a show at the Walnut Street Theater. It's intense. So it's been, and in the circus, it's literally intense. But it's barely a joke. I'm sorry.
I got it.
It's not even worth getting. But
one of the things that I love about your work, which is something that I do myself, I love that interaction with the audience of just stepping out and taking them on a ride with you, and you never know where they're going to take you. Yes. But just watching these clips right now, and I've watched it a few times, looking back I'm missing the hugs. I mean, to see you getting your audience hugging, strangers hugging each other, by the way.
Absolutely. I miss it too. And, I think that's one of the reasons I'm excited that the show was preserved and beautifully for broadcast. I think over the months when it's eventually aired in a year, I think it's going to really affect people because I'm in one of those shows. I'm in shows where you actually touch people. I bring them up. As you say, I hug them. I'm all over them. and there's not a lot of entertainment that's quite like it. And it has grown over the years, Richard. I mean, I've let go of some of the set material in lieu of the interaction, because, you know, I do the show. I'm going to keep doing the show hopefully for another 30 years, and not everyone knows who he is, or not. You know, with that specific show, and it shouldn't matter. You know, the show needs to hold up whether they know who Groucho Marx is or not.
Exactly.
I try to really literally reach out to them and bring them into the action. And so they don't need to know the facts. They don't need to know the movies. They don't need to know the TV show. They don't have to know anything about him, but they get us. But the interaction, that live contact is what they respond to. And as you said, I never know what's going to happen from night to night, nor does my piano players. And I've had some great pianists, musical directors like Gerald Sternbach, Alex Rybeck, Mark Robbie. Gerald has played for Mel Brooks and Carrie Fisher, and they're one-person shows. And Alex Rybeck has played for everyone in Broadway and on Cabaret,
including Faith Prince.
Yes, including Faith, and the same could go with Gerald Sternbach. But the point is, they don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. The audience doesn't know what's going to happen, and so that's the exhilaration for me. I at times miss that jumping off of a cliff. Because I'm, like a lot of performers, started out as a fairly shy person, self-conscious kid. And so this was a place, what you said, what is it really like? You're asking what it's really like. I realized that early on in my life, I needed to be aligned with humor and comedy and escape through it, to disappear into it. As a middle-aged man now, I can look back at it. What this pandemic has done, almost painfully so, has really made me look at everything, at all my decisions, at how I wound up here. And so I try not to look back with regret, and try to focus on the beauty that's come out of it. But we all adjust to life. George Kaufman, and who wrote The Humorist, said his adjustment was humor. It's the arts. The arts saved me. Performance saved me. It takes us out of that. It's grim. Life can be absolutely grim, and the arts give us beauty and hope and light. And boy, am I more aware of that than ever. And so I see, as I get older, and certainly during this particularly quiet period of life, why I'm where I am, and how it's been important to my survival, and how it's my whole life is, I've met friends. I'm meeting you through this. I've met lovers and friends, and have family because of the theater. I've had ridiculously exciting experiences because of the theater. I've met my heroes because of the theater. I got to perform for Carol Channing and Robin Williams and people like Sean Penn and Garson Kanin. And, in the mid 80s, as you recall, Richard, there, you'd do a show, who would be there in the audience? Kitty Carlisle in New York, yes, Kitty Carlisle, yes. Shelley Winters, Celeste Holm, Garson Kanin and Marion Seldes. And you're going, and I'm 23 years old at the time. I was a kid doing that show. I was slightly older than you, but we were at the same age. And a lot of those heroes became my friends as well. And I don't take it for granted. I thank God that I came to New York when I came to New York. I'm glad that I came into the theater that was there when I came to New York. I'm glad that I came to, as seedy as it was, and you remember what it was like in New York in 1983. I was proud to be a part of that world at that time. Me too. I really was, Richard. And, I love, you are the Carol Channing guy.
That was a lifetime ago.
But
the funny thing about me is, when I was doing it, and because of her age and everything, I always felt that, I'll be able to grow into it. And I look at you with Groucho, you picked the right person, or he picked you.
Well, you're right about that, because he lived and kept working into his 80s.
Yes.
And everyone thinks I'm 20 years older than I am because I was so young doing it. The people I worked with were 10 years older, and they're all in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and deceased. So I was on the young end of that, and I was always the kid, the wunderkind, in these shows. That's changed now, of course. But meeting Carol Channing, and because I know that what she means to you, I'll never forget. after the show, and she came up to me, Frank, and I'm going to do a bad imitation of
No,
Harold.
please. There are no bad imitations. Only the ones that aren't done.
She says, Frank, you're wonderful. You don't push. When I was your age, I pushed. And that was, but she was right. I mean, I learned how to kind of just, in a way, I had a great instinct. I just knew when I was playing him at age 65, Groucho Marx, or 80, I knew about economy of movement and speech and tempering it all. And it was a beautiful compliment from a legend. And I had a cold that night. She goes, I would have guessed, And then she offered me her doctor's appointment. And, she was very loving. I mean, I love being part of that tradition. And one of my early influences was Hal Holbrook, the king of the solo form, who I saw when I was in college, when I was preparing this one-person show. And another situation, as you said, he became a dear friend of mine in the last 7 years. Just passed away, of course, in January. But he's the grandfather of the form, and it's an odd thing what we all do. It's a one-person show is a very strange concoction. The fact
but
that
I want to say to on that with respect to all the people behind the scenes, there's really no such thing as a one-person show. For me, the audience was very much a part of what I was doing. Getting up there, I mean, that to me was the thrilling part. I had an outline, as I know you do as well, but just getting out there and just talking to people from all walks of life. Getting back to Carol for a moment, she once said that for a show to succeed, you need people from all walks of life. You need doctors, and you need lawyers, and you need housewives, and you need stockbrokers. You need all these different people sitting in the theater. And I remember having a conversation with her once, and I'd love to get your take on this, where she said to me, I called her after a performance and I said, oh my God, I just had such a, horrible night. I was performing in a country club. And she's, Richard, don't you know the country club audiences are the worst in the world? They're not there to see you. They're there to see each other.
The worst show I ever had was at a country club, and I wanted to jump off a bridge. I don't know what had happened. This is, they do the show, always gets a standing ovation. I'm always able to, how it is. You can, even on a Sunday matinee in Florida, I can get them.
Right.
In fact, some of the craziest stuff comes out of the most challenging performances. But there was one time, I can't even think of the town. It started with a B. That's all I can remember. But it was a bummer. B for bummer is what it was. And I hope never to enter that town again, unless they have a big fat check, then I might consider it. But yeah, those country clubs, they're brutal. But yeah, you're right. She was right. It's a social, you see them. You see in Beverly Hills when there's events, and you'll have a great comic, at the stand, and everyone's chattering. No one cares. I once did a fundraiser in Rancho Mirage for MS for an organization that Bill Marx, Harpo's son, was chairing, and Jack Jones was also co-chairing this event. They wanted me to do some shtick as Groucho, right? And Barbara Marx Sinatra was there. I mean, it was like, it was the elite of the desert. They're all there, and they're showing clips of the Marx Brothers prior to my shtick. And there's the famous stateroom scene from Night at the Opera, and everyone comes tumbling out after it's filled up with 50 people. And no one's watching it, no one's laughing, and I'm in full Groucho regalia. And I turned to Harpo Marx's son, Bill Marx, and I said, Bill, if they're not laughing at that, I'm in a hell of a lot of trouble. And he started laughing because he's, if they're not going to laugh at the real deal, they're not going to. It worked out, fortunately, but you have to work a little harder. But anyway, but that's part of the joy too. You talk about. I like the challenge of it. I like playing at a 2,000-seat state-of-the-art performing arts center. I like playing it in the Round. I'll play it at a university. I like playing at an old vaudeville palace. I'll play at a high school, that has a, I'm not snobby about any of it. I love to work. So I've played all kinds of venues, as you have, and you're right. And not just the audience, which is so integral to a one-person show because of that give and take. I like being in these towns and meeting people from cab drivers to hotel staff, to people in restaurants, from hosts and servers, and I love all of that. And I've met a lot of friends, as I'm sure you have, Richard, and our colleagues have, who will travel to see you if you're within a 6-hour radius of them. And you develop these friendships, and you go out after the show and you have a cocktail or a meal. And that is a joyful thing. And then I feel connected. Then I feel like I'm part of a grand tradition. And I referenced Hal Holbrook before, who was he's somewhere. Where is he? He's there. I don't know where he is. There he is.
There he is. Yes. Wow.
And I reference him because he believed in the tradition. He was all about the tradition. And he loved that I love the tradition of the theater, and that I really care about the audience, and I want them to get their money's worth. I've never missed a show. I've never been late, and that's not something I see all the time.
No.
But
I have a question, regarding the work that you're doing now, because we are coming out of the pandemic, and there are a lot of protocols that are being lifted, and a lot of protocols that are still being imposed on these theaters. Do you feel that this will help you in terms of the bookings, because they can't book larger cast or anything? Do you think it's going to help those that are in the solo artist industry in terms of the work that we do or we've done?
That's my hope. That's been my thought all along, because first of all, it's economical, and so many theaters have been decimated financially. So a show like mine makes sense, or whoever else does this today. I don't, but yeah, I think there's a good chance that I'll come back fairly strong in 2022. And my show could be done without me certainly touching someone. And, you just got to look in that direction. And when I first did it, when I was a kid, I barely improvised, Richard. I'm just, it'd be an occasional, I didn't know how to improvise. I learned on the job. So, I know how to, you learn how to pull back and how to modify a performance to fit any scenario, to fit any venue, to fit an audience. You're making those split-second decisions. Right. And as you know, it's like, oh, get away from that person, or jump onto that person, or knowing when to stop ad-libbing, knowing when you need to work I remember something just, when something starts to feel like it's bombing, it's like, okay, let's let go of the set stuff and go right into what's your name, where you're from, what do you, all that. So
well, it's very funny. My husband is very shy off stage. And yet, if we go to a show where there is that moment where the person is going to come into the audience and they're going to pick someone, he's always the one they pick.
What is it about him? Is he?
He's very. I don't think effusive is the right word, but it's obvious that he's enjoying what he's seeing, and he's not that pick me energy. And you can pick up on that energy right away. That someone's going, get me up there on the stage, because they want to have their moment in the spotlight.
Right.
And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. I would always try to go after someone. I never wanted to go after anyone I knew, of course.
Right.
It had to be someone that I didn't know that I would bring on. And the funny thing is, and because of that, I'm in San Francisco, and one night I bring Armistead Maupin on stage. And when I asked his name, and he said Armistead, and I said, like in Maupin, he said, that's the one. And the entire audience is on the floor. And I didn't realize at the moment that I was bringing him up on stage. But those things happen. I want to go back to the beginnings for you. Yeah. Your parents, your father, Dominic, and your mother, Teresa,
right.
They were not in the business. And I'm always interested. I like to go back to that 5-year-old self. What was it initially that pulled you towards the spotlight? And I know, according to what I read, that you got your first check, I guess, as an entertainer in puppetry when you were 11 years old. So did that spin your head around, or was this something that you really knew very early on that you wanted to pursue this as a career?
Well, if we want to talk about 5-year-old Frank Ferrante, Richard, I was watching television constantly. I was watching The Lucy Show. I was watching Paul Winchell with Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith, in Los Angeles. It was local, I think, then. And I marveled at it. I wanted to be in that clubhouse with Jerry Mahoney and Paul Winchell and Knucklehead. And I watched The Mothers-in-Law when I was in 5 and they all felt like Lucille Ball. When you're 5, it seems real. They're in your house. Lucille Ball becomes your aunt. Kate Ballard felt like my aunt, Eve Arden felt like my aunt. So when I got to be friends with Kay Ballard via Lilian Montevecchi, who I worked with a great deal, and it was a great friend of mine who I love dearly.
I worked with her, incredible talent. Yes.
Yeah, she was one of my favorite people. I've got, she passed away in 2018, yes. And Kay and I became friends. Kay would, that's one of the joys. Kay would, I was working with Tony Award-winning Lilian Montevecchi in a whole different kind of show. Mm-hmm. And then Kay would come to watch Lilian. I get to meet Kay. Kay's imitating my crazy character, this character that I do in the circus world, the Caesar character for a show called Teatro ZinZanni. And that's the one I'm supposed to be playing in Chicago. My point being, I love you're learning about timing and you're learning from masters who are stage performers. I didn't realize, Lucy's from the stage and Kay's from the stage and Eve's from the stage. And so that was the beginning, and watching Desi Arnaz, watching how beautifully he set up Lucille Ball, timing, economy, focus, all that is, I realized I was studying then. So it's
very interesting, if I may interrupt you, that you and I are from the same era. So we also grew up with watching television when it was 3 networks.
Yes.
And those networks vied for the largest demographic that they could get. Mm-hmm. So we would see entertainers from our generation sharing a stage with those from our parents and from our grandparents' generation. And think about this for just a moment. When television came along and started to grow before you and I were even around, it was only about 25 to 30 years after the demise of vaudeville that all of those performers were going to television.
Right. Yeah. So you're getting a real taste of their skill via this, from the stage world, completely. And I loved it, and it thrilled me. It was much more fun that was going on in my cul-de-sac in my little town in the San Gabriel Valley. It was just I liked the fun of it, and it was freeing. And it's the first time I ever laughed was probably watching television at 5. And then when I was 11, as you mentioned, I lived in a town called Sierra Madre, and there was a puppet theater workshop in this. If you're out this coast, I have to show you, in this old hotel. It's like almost in the Western style. It's still there. It's called the Shirley Hotel on Baldwin, and it's intact. There's not many bits of architecture like this, I think, in the nation. And inside there, I took classes with Virginia Austin Curtis. Now, Mrs. Curtis was in her 70s at this time. And you walked into this workshop, and all of us kids did, on the weekends. And on her walls, Richard, were photos of her with people like Phil Silvers and the Three Stooges. She was a vaudevillian. So, and there was also a sculpt, she had a Charlie McCarthy kind of a puppet, a doll that she had sculpted for F&B Dolls for Edgar Bergen. What Mrs. Curtis had done, which was a big deal for a puppeteer, she had sculpted Mortimer Snerd for Bergen. She is the one who came up, helped work on the design and actually came up with the original head for this. And what she did, Richard, she had this boy clown puppet. I wish I had it here. Hold on. Can I show you?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to see it.
Go vamp. Sing a song, Richard. Hello, Dolly.
Or hello, I must be going.
Dolly, it's so nice to have you back where you belong.
Lydia, oh Lydia, say, have you met Lydia? Oh Lydia, the tattooed lady.
So this is the puppet that she created, but it was a marionette, Clippo the Clown. So what she had like a four-foot version of this marionette, huge. And then that marionette operated another marionette like this that operated another marionette like that. And that was her act in vaudeville. And she was so fluid. I mean, I watched it and it was real. And she was an artist. She was a pro. She'd been doing it for decades. And it took my breath away. And I thought, I believe her. I believed everything she was doing with it. And I thought, this fantasy world is much better than real life. And I fell in love with it. And so she paid me $2.50 to operate marionettes. And that was my first job, in the theater. And that's why I have this little friend, Clippo.
Do you think that's a lost art form?
Well, there's still people who, it's not as prevalent, I think, as it was when we were younger and even before that, because of the high-tech nature of our existence. And of course, you can talk to a puppeteer could speak to it much better than I could in terms of how it's evolved over the years. But I don't know, there's something thrilling about someone just there's something just gorgeous about the simplicity that comes with operating those strings and animating. So I watched her create characters, and I watched her tell stories, Richard. And I thought, well, I want to tell stories. I want to be part of this. And then around that same age, I was exposed to the early comedians, again on television, through W.C. Fields, the Marx Brothers, Mae West. And I knew there was something very subversive, the Three Stooges, something subversive about all of them, and something very wrong and adult and naughty and anti-everything. And for a Catholic Italian who was being taught by nuns, it went a long way with me, Richard. I loved it. I thought, oh gosh, I want to be on their team. And that really catapulted me into the local library. And I wanted to read all about performers and comedians. And I remember reading Steve Allen's book, The Funny Men, which became Funny People, he had several editions of this book. And I just read about Jimmy Durante, Bob Hope, Jack Benny, Groucho Marx, etc. And it was, and then again, I get to know Steve Allen, and Steve Allen, I'm on his radio show. All these things came about. My favorite book at that library was Son of Groucho. It was written by Arthur Marx. I was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. It was the only Groucho book they had. I go there, read it. And who knew I was going to end up being hired by Arthur?
Well, I want to go there for a moment. But before we get there, were you imitating these comedians in school? Were you performing for the other kids? Now, you did meet Arthur Marx, so we will jump ahead so that we can get as much information in as possible. But how did that meeting come about?
I was a theater student at University of Southern California. And as a senior project, it was called Directed Research. My mentor there, was a guy named William White, Professor Bill White. He said, Frank, what do you like? I said, I like comedy. So, well, what kind of, well, I like vintage. He goes, why don't you put on a show? I said, what? And so Gabe Kaplan had a show around that time that had been tooling around, written by Arthur Marx. And it was doing one-nighters. It was doing a sit down in the Westwood Playhouse, which is now the Geffen Playhouse. And I saw it, and I loved the subject matter, and I liked the material of the old Groucho. It was very moving because I remember being a boy and watching Groucho age and come to a close to his life. It was very painful if you loved him to see him diminished. But I was fascinated with the show that was written by Arthur Marx and Robert Fisher. And I said to myself, I had a lot of audacity, a lot of chutzpah. It's like, I think I can do this. And so so my teacher said, go for it, put on a one-person show. So I found a script, but it took a while. I got the script from Elaine Stritch. And Elaine Stritch was married to John Bay. John Bay did a one-man show about Groucho Marx called An Elephant in My Pajamas. He had just passed away a year prior. It's like around 1983. And I'm in my dorm at USC writing Elaine Stritch, and I'm calling her on the phone, not quite knowing how gigantic this human is. And of course, she got even more gigantic and legendary as over the next 30 years. But she was huge then. And I was listening to I thought I should probably buy an album that she's on. So I buy the Company album, and I'm playing the original score. And so anyway, it was really Elaine. So Elaine Stritch and I were going back and forth because I wanted to use her husband's script. And finally she comes out to, what am I, 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. She comes out to Los Angeles to do the Johnny Carson show. I think they were certainly friends. I think they were even lovers at some point, is my understanding. But I digress. But she was going to be a guest. And you said no gossip, but that was gossip. Sorry, I noticed.
That's okay. It's quite all right. Go ahead.
It's too late. Just cut it out of the other version.
It's perfectly fine.
But anyway, so she shows up, and she sends me, and I wrote her a note back. It was going backstage. She said, "Frank, you can have it." She sent the note back. You can have it, and here's my phone number. And so I see her after the Tonight Show appearance, and she gives me a hug. And so I started with that script. Now, the script since then has been completely rewritten, reworked. It's no longer John Bay's work. but it was my start. And that's how it happened. So what I did, I invited, as a student, Richard, I invited everyone alive that knew Groucho, Lucille Ball, Jack Lemmon. I mean, first of all the stars, and then all the writers of those films, his family, Groucho's son Arthur, Groucho's daughter Miriam, Maury Riskind, who co-wrote Animal Crackers and A Night at the Opera with George S. Kaufman. He was 89. He showed up. So the key people that showed up were Arthur Marx, Groucho's son, Miriam Marx Allen, Groucho's daughter, and Maury Riskind, who was a writer for Groucho and a dear friend. And they're at my college performance. And I'm nauseous before I go on. It's sold out, like 600 seats. And it killed. And afterward, Arthur Marx, who wrote the Kaplan show, said, if I ever do a show about my father again, I'd like to use you. And I thought, yeah, right. I didn't sleep for 3 days. And I graduate from school. And then I get through the summer and fall. I open up in a dinner theater in Kansas City, Tiffany's Attic Dinner Theater. And the guy, and it was a big hit in Kansas City. We got this rave review. And the gentleman, Hennessy and Carruthers, who owned this dinner theater, wanted to produce in New York. They raised about $500,000. Within a year of my graduation or so, we're at the Lucille Hotel in '86. It was insane. And
now, when you wrote to all of these celebrities or these people who had a connection with, you didn't really know them.
No.
You just took a chance.
Yes. Yeah, crazy. And it was, I got all those addresses from a guy named Robert Whitey, who had done a documentary on the Marx Brothers. The Marx Brothers in a nutshell. It was the first documentary on them. Robert Whitey is also a director, producer of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He has a gigantic career. That happened, but we were both basically kids at the time. And, but anyway, he was, it really, I always say when I do outreach or, do classes or master classes, you have to, it's a numbers game. You have to write 100 people so you get 2 people to say yes. You've got to risk. It's exhausting when I go through my so-called memorabilia in my archives, or whatever you want to call it, my boxes of junk, let's be honest, from my closet. And I see.
But obviously, excuse me, you had this love of Groucho. Obviously, you have to have that love or it's not there.
Right.
But how much of it was really ingrained in you from having studied him over the years? And how much of it, when you first started out, was really hard work for you?
I grew up with his rhythms. I grew up with Jack Benny's rhythms. I grew up with Phil Silver's rhythms. I watched Milton, so that was in me. But to learn that kind of text, to sit down as a 21-year-old the first time I did it before I did it on campus was in a church hall, my church hall, it's like, I'd be there at 1 o'clock in the morning with an audio cassette, Richard, listening to his voice over and over again to get the sound and the rhythms. And it just speaking along with him. And so it was a lot of work, and I had to be over prepared. I'd never done anything like this. It was all new. And that's why I went to see someone like a Hal Holbrook when I was a kid. I saw Jack Klugman do Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ one-person show. I saw a Dorothy Parker one-person show. I saw a Jack Benny one-person show by a person who became a good friend of mine, Eddie Carroll. So, it was all a new form. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew. But to answer your question, it was a lot of work. And but it felt right. It felt natural. It felt like it was supposed to be. And I felt that I really wanted to share my love and joy with other people. I wanted people to know what I was experiencing, because I didn't realize other people knew who he was when I was a kid. You just think it's your own private kind of treasure. And I wanted to share this with people. I didn't realize, there are millions of people who appreciate this kind of comedy. But I still feel like it's missionary work, to this day. I feel like I'll go to, I've played Australia twice. I've played in some remote spots. And to me, to make people laugh, in Perth or wherever, or Paducah or Altoona or, Dubuque, it's exciting when you realize I'm getting the same laughs here that I get in New York or Boston or San Francisco or Los Angeles. And that's very satisfying. I'm digressing, but to answer your question, it was a lot of work. And
what was your opening night like for you at the Lucille Hotel Theater? That's when you really, I remember vividly the splash that you made on New York at the time.
Yeah.
And that night, were you able to really be in the moment and really enjoy yourself? Or did you feel as if you were being shot out of a cannon?
Little bit. Well, I'll tell you what happened. It was, you're right. We did make we were the little show that could. And we had, like you said, the great Faith Prince was in the show playing a dozen roles, the women of Groucho's life. And she's
I came backstage that night, obviously, and met both of you. And it was such a thrill because you both were so phenomenal together.
For that. Well, and we've just reconnected in the last few years. A lot of time went by, we hadn't spoken, but we had that shared experience of like having a show that, listen, it looked like the show was going to close in previews. They fired a director, Arthur Marx, who's not a director, replaced the director. We all were directing the show. I was, the other actors were, the set designer, Michael Hotop, who just passed away, was an extremely talented set designer. All of us were kind of directing ourselves to a certain extent. And we could have closed. I came here from my little hometown, which is where I am right now, and I could have been home within a week. We open, there's a party at Stringfellows. I've got my little bow tie. You know what I'm talking about. You've been there.
Yeah.
I've got my little outfit that I bought on Christopher Street. There was a little clothing store near the theater, and I bought it off the dummy and put it on this dummy. And
let me ask you, when was the last time that you were in New York?
Within the last couple of years. I always go back to the Village, and I always go on Christopher Street. I always go to the Lucille Theater.
It's not the same.
I know. I miss it. Had it was a rough time in history, for the community.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that was brutal.
Do you remember the cigar store that was on the corner of Christopher?
Absolutely.
They just announced their closing, and that has been such a fixture.
Village Cigars.
Yes.
I hope they leave the signage because it's iconic. And what with boots and saddles and all these crazy ties. What was I forget? There was just crazy, and it was all new to me. I was 20. I didn't know what was going on. I can tell you some stories, But to answer your question, we do the show, we open up, and as you know, the critics back then, before this era we're in, they would go, they would come the day before opening because they got to get the review out the day after you open. So we go to the party, and I walk into Stringfellows, Richard, and you're asking me how I responded, and I'm there, and I'm with Faith Prince, and my parents, my proud mom and dad had flown in across the country from California to New York. I have relatives there. The Marx family is there. Arthur and Miriam and Groucho's family's there. My family's there. And CNN is, well, I'll tell you what happens. I walk into this party, and all of a sudden I hear applause. I don't know, like 150 people are applauding. And I went, it was for me. And, and that was a life-changing moment. I didn't know. Honestly, that's how innocent and I was guileless, and it was like like lightning had struck. I went, oh my gosh, this is part of my accomplishment. This is something it was a beautiful thing. And then CNN was there, and people are interviewing you. It was wild thing for a 23-year-old boy, which was what I was, with very little experience in life and work.
Now, you've also gone on to do Animal Crackers, and you did the Coconuts. The Coconuts, Animal Crackers or Coconuts, the Goodspeed Opera House.
Yeah, Animal Crackers at Goodspeed, which was great, with Charlie Repoli directing. And we did it again at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and that was where Kristen Chenoweth got her equity card in that production. So again, I got to meet all these great character actors too, like Hal Robinson and Carol Swarbrick, and I can go on and on about these people. Kurt Knudsen. I was learning from them. They're all 25, 30 years older than I was. And again, I was the lead in these major regional productions, musicals, and I'm in my 20s, and I'm working with these New York performers, and I'm absorbing it all. I've had this great education, and so I was able to apply all of this education, this to other roles. And I direct plays, I do other part, but I learned from this great community, this Broadway community, people that work off Broadway and regional theater. These performers, that this is what they do. This is their lives. This isn't a hobby. These are real deal pros. Most of them are journeymen, journey women, journey people, I should say, performers. and as I am, I just love the fact that I keep working and hopefully get better and do different things.
But I also want to talk about the work you do with the Walnut Street Theater.
Yeah.
You are very, very involved with them and their comedies and
Yes.
everything. Are you equally happy on that side of the footlights in terms of?
Yeah, I am, Richard. It's in a way it's freeing. I love actors. I love designers. And what you were saying, a one-person show isn't a one-person show. In my case, there's a musical component. There's a musical director. There's everyone around it. They're from front of house, designers, you name it, producers. But I love directing, and I haven't done a lot of it, but I've done quite a bit, particularly at that venue, which is the oldest continuously running theater in the country up until the pandemic, the Walnut Street Theater, since 1809. And so I was able to do a lot of Neil Simon. I was a kind of a great deal of his canon, from the whole Biloxi Blues, Broadway Bound, Brighton Beach Memoirs, these beautiful plays, Lost in Yonkers, Sunshine Boys, Laughter on the 23rd Floor. And so I loved working with actors because I get it. Like I learned a lot from Charlie Repoli, who directed it. And I saw he's a performer, and I saw how a performer director deals with performers. He gave us confidence to do our best, and he had a great sense of humor, and he was gentle, and he'd sit there and watch us performing Animal Crackers, and he would imitate every one of us. He'd be doing, he'd be mouthing us along, then he'd be Margaret Dumont. It was great, and he was so immersed and so connected to all of us as performers. But I love directing, and I like doing. It's tough to find original material, and at the Walnut they have a second space, and I was able to develop and direct a piece, the first director on a piece called Old Wicked Songs, which was a Pulitzer. I'm very proud of that Pulitzer finalist. But I was fortunate to have a connection to this theater, so I had an outlet when I was able to find this play. That's a John Marin's play, and it was like the third most produced play of 1998, I think. And but that was a two-hander. But my point is, love directing, love working with designers, and it kind of takes the pressure off me. Sometimes it's nice not to be the one where it's got to be on your shoulders. It's nice to tell the story, to work with. Recently, I worked with Ken Ludwig, one of his. He's so prolific with his work. We did a comedy of tenors there, and I love doing farce. I just love farce, and I got to be in it and direct it and work with this master, farce maker. That never gets old. So I like being out. To answer your question, I get a different kind of thrill from guiding a piece as a director.
You also have a one-man show where you play George S. Kaufman. So, and how was that a normal, natural evolution out of the Groucho work, and the work that you were doing in studying his life as well?
Well, there's another person that I wanted to share with an audience. Like I wanted to share Groucho, and that was a commission. I wrote it and I was in it, and that was a commission from the Walnut Street Theater. It was a co-production with American Stage in St. Petersburg, and tougher to do. It ended up, by the time I was at the Walnut in the last weeks, it had found itself. But it's not easy to do a play about a writer, because most of his life was literally hunched over a typewriter. So dramatizing it was tricky, but I got there, and I was proud of that. But it's a tough sell. It's a tough show to book because people don't really, the general audience doesn't really know who he is, and they should, and that's why I did the play.
Absolutely.
But I was proud. I worked with Anne Kaufman Schneider, George Kaufman's daughter. I got to interview at length Kitty Carlisle Hart, who's of course married to Moss Hart, Kaufman and Hart. And so I spent hours with these people, in their homes, and Jerome Shodorov and Mary Wicks. Anyone that worked with Kaufman who was alive, I was interviewing so I can figure him out. He's a complicated doer figure. This is a guy, for the people who don't know, who wrote "You Can't Take It With You" and The Man Who Came to Dinner, and directed Guys and Dolls. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And of course, the Marx book. some of the best Marx movies. This is one of the greatest playwright directors of all time. He would have 2 or 3 Broadway shows running simultaneously. I mean, it's wild.
We're closing at a time in a few minutes, which I knew would happen. I want you to come back. You're welcome here anytime. Anytime you have something to promote, you've got a platform here. But I want to ask you, since 1986, opening of the Lucille Lortel Theater, and looking at the business up to this point now, pandemic excluded, of course, what are some of the changes that you love that have happened in the trajectory of your career, in the business itself? What are some of the changes that you really don't like? And what do you miss most about what the business was like when you first hit it?
Well, it's a lot of good questions. And if I may, the way I look at it, it's like I've always kind of been a bull, Richard. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt like an anachronism, like I never quite belonged. And yet I kept going because I did have one foot in yesterday and one foot in today. And I try to make it my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm very much inspired by yesterday. So I've never looked, it's always been up and down. So I've always kind of been the same all the way through it. I've been driven, and I also have joy for it. So the question I could really address, which is what I do miss, are some of the people that I worked with that we talked about earlier. I really miss that, and I'm kind of I'm an Italian guy, and I'm a sentimental person. And I have bits of all these people around me who've passed, and from Lillian to Arthur to Groucho to all, to friends of mine I've worked with, and they're all around me. I miss some of these people that were particularly special that touched my life. Mm-hmm. I feel fortunate, but you can't help but feel some of the loss. So I try to stay in gratitude, like mm-hmm. how lucky I was that I got to work with or meet, as you have been, this person or that person. In terms of the business, I never understood I don't understand. I've never understood the business. I've had agents. I haven't had agents. I've published, I publicize my own stuff. And most things I get are self-generated. Most of the work I get. So that hasn't changed. So, mm-hmm. The business, I never knew what it was to start off with. I was just doing my thing. So I can't even say I liked it more then or more now. Mm-hmm. You wonder, the world is changing. You wonder where you can be in this, in this world, which I love, that is very much focused on diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. I want to be a proponent. I want to be an advocate. I want to be a part of it somehow. And that's kind of what's in my mind right now. How can I continue, hopefully for another 30 years, when we every 30 years, we should do this, by the way, Richard.
Oh, we will. I want to see you do an evening with Groucho Marx at Carnegie Hall.
Well, that's not a bad idea at all. You've got a front row seat, my friend.
Though that performance. Anyway, I've been a fan of yours for 35 plus years. It means the world to me. Shelley Goldstein, I know she's watching. Thank you for facilitating this, yes. Making it happen. I want to thank everybody for being here today. If you did enjoy today's show, please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm all about celebrating artists, as I say, from every walk of life, and what it is that the artists of the world, the Frank Ferrantes of the world, bring to the table. It's about celebrating their worth. So I know that there are many aspects of a career that we cannot cram into an hour that are all there. But I wanted to share his humanity, his body of worth, and I hope I achieve that today. And again, please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends. We've got a lot of great content coming up, and there's a lot of great content behind us as well. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list after this show is over and reach out to the 9th name on your list and reach out to that person with a phone call. Not an email, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. Let them know what they mean to you. I mean, there are things happening in the world right now. None of us know what tomorrow holds. I don't want to end on a morbid note, but this is it. Let's reach out to those people that matter to us. Frank and I have talked about many of the people that were part of our lives that are no longer here. So it's important that we carpe diem, seize the day, and reach out to those people that we love. Frank, thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give to the world. I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching right now. And again, thank you for being here today.
First of all, it's my pleasure. I want to thank you for your generosity of spirit and for acknowledging, performers and artists and the arts. It's huge. It's not done enough. It's a very critical time right now in history in our lives. So I want to celebrate you, Mr. Skipper. Raise a glass to you, sir. And I want to thank all those who are watching. And I say, please continue to support the arts, support the Actors Fund, and keep laughing. We will survive this. And I cheers to you all. But Mr. S, this is for you.
Thank you very much. Hello, we must be going.